technical questions?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
great. So here's a fun technical question that the hedge fund D.E. Shaw asks. So D.E. Shaw is where Jeff Bezos used to work, I think in '94 before he joined Amazon. So he was a big hotshot VP there, got some money, started up Amazon.com. So D.E. Shaw's still kicking alive and they're doing really well. They asked some really tough questions on Wall Street. But I think this question is tough, but not like insanely tough. I think it's a really good question that most people who've taken a probability and statistics class should have some reasoning around. Okay. And then the final thing I want to let people know is, guys, I'm going to ask a question. It's more about how you think and how you explain yourself rather than what's your answer. So just keep that in mind. And Cristina, that means, verbalize your own thinking, and we're going to give hella partial credit, right? So if you have some ideas, because I don't expect you to have the answer, and it actually requires a whiteboard. So without further ado, let's do the question, and then you'll see where we can get some partial credit. So the question is, say you have a coin, okay, and you flip it 1,000 times, and 550 of the times it came up heads. Okay, so 550 heads out of 1,000 coin flips. But Cristina, do you think this coin is biased? Why or why not?
So I would say no. I don't think immediately it would be biased, because although 1,000 is like a large trial size, I guess. You can't ever guarantee that it's going to be 50-50.
Right.
But I think you could maybe conduct like a test using like a p-value with, you can automate that to even more trials and see if it, if it holds on to like that threshold and it's, above or below the p-value, then maybe you could determine if it's actually biased or not. Otherwise, I think just because you got 550 flips, you can't throw the coin away and say oh no, this is a bad coin.
Right. Because of just general random noise, it can be 550. That's in the realm of possibility. Great. So this is a really good starting answer, right? And I think you've already earned so much partial credit because you've already hit on certain words like, hey, there's always some noise or some variation. You might want to conduct a statistical test and see what the p-value is and see where the null hypothesis is that it's fair, see if you can reject that, see what the confidence interval looks like. So, that's great. And if you had paper and pencil, you mentioned like a p-test, or a p-value, what kind of statistical test might you use to, try to set that up? Maybe we'll solve it somewhere else and we'll have a table to look up some information, but I'm just curious, okay, given these numbers, I've given you a few numbers, 550 heads, and there's 1,000 coin flips, how would you go about seeing, is this coin biased or not? How would you go about constructing that p-value?
Yeah, so I think like you mentioned, setting up like an interval, like a confidence interval to conduct like a hypothesis test on. You could use the central limit theorem.
Perfect, yeah.
And it would help you set up that interval and then conduct the test.
Perfect, yeah. So this is great, and I know we can stop it right here because, with paper and pencil, we could have done the full thing. But you use the keyword central limit theorem. That was great. Another keyword you could have used is z-test. Let's do a z-test. One thing you could have said is, hey, when you flip 1,000 coins, and if it was fair, you would have expected 500 out of 1,000, right? That's like the mean. What's the variance look like? So one keyword you could have used would have been Bernoulli random variable, right? Because flipping a coin, it's 50-50 event. It's a Bernoulli random variable, and you could have said, hey, you know what? The formula for variance of this would have been n times p times 1 minus p. And by now I'm not trying to say you would actually have said this. These interviews happen on a whiteboard or on paper pencil. And an interviewer would have pushed you towards this. So I'm not trying to expect you to be just sitting there and start saying these formulas. If we kept going, I would have pushed you to that. And what you would have found would have been 1,000 times 0.5 times 0.5. What that looks like is 250. The square root of 250 is 16 something. And you start to realize, wow, if the standard deviation is 16, right? So if you had 516 coin flips, or 584 on the other way, basically 484, basically 500 minus 16. That's like one standard deviation away from the mean, right?
Right.
But we didn't do 516 coin flips. We did 550. We're 3 standard deviations away from the mean. The chance of that just happening randomly, that's like less than 0.1%, right? So now, of course, this is where better answers can come here, where it's like, hey, sure, maybe you don't have the exact intuition on like, hey, what's the p-score there? But you could have been like, let's see what's the standard deviation. The standard deviation is 16, and this thing was 50. That's more than 3 standard deviations away. That's pretty rare. If something's 3 standard deviations away from the mean,
Yeah.
you know, so maybe the coin is biased, right? So I think that would have been like the full kind of answer. And I know just for this, you crushed it. You gave a good keywords, and at these more quantitative Wall Street jobs, they would actually expect you to run through the math. And that's what we have in the book, a bunch of practice with these kind of questions, because it's hard to, you know, think on your feet like this and do the math. But, you know, and that's why our book also has all these like different formulas in there, almost like a cheat sheet style. Because you're going to need to know about, you know, different probability distributions and how to run different tests. So,
yeah, I think it's definitely helpful to go through going through the different questions in the book, because, you know, I did take, you know, I'm a math major, so I did have to take a lot of mathematics and statistics courses, but it's never really framed in like a business problem sense. Like I've never seen it framed like that. And prior to this, I was studying for actuarial exams.
Sure.
So that was more of like the same statistical concepts, like different distributions in more of a context, but still it wasn't business context. It was more of like an insurance,
and that's what practice makes perfect, right? Because at the end of the day, I didn't ask you some deep learning question about neural networks. I asked you a question that you learn in, you know, your first or second statistics class about how do you do a z-test or what's a Bernoulli random variable. And that's where practice makes perfect, because it's really easy to mess up on this kind of thing. And I asked a room of Harvard students about a month ago, I asked them the same question. There was about 90 folks, and almost everyone's like, nah, the coin's not biased. Like, this is just what it is. And very few people were like, oh, gee, you know what, let's conduct a test. And then we started talking about the test, and everyone's like, oh yeah, now that you say it that way, 3 standard deviations, you know, but people don't intuitively just say the word, what's the mean and what's the standard deviation? Well, how crazy of an event is it? You know, because it wasn't an accident that I gave you the number 1,000 coin flips, 550, and the mean is 500. You know, I kept these probabilities simple. People could actually manipulate them, you know, so that you don't just wing it and be like, as you know, if it was 502 or if it was 700, you know, both seem likely, you know, the numbers were there for a reason. But you did great. This is awesome.